Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen, I'm so sorry to interrupt you. If anybody's having any issues connecting to the Wi-Fi, please reach out and let me know ASAP. Our service support will be leaving shortly. Thank you so much. Again, any issues with Wi-Fi, please let me know ASAP.
Hello, all. If anyone needs help logging into the internet, we do have tech support here for this morning. All right, good morning. Can folks hear me okay? Welcome to APL, to the Lunar Surface Innovation Consortium Spring Meeting. I would like to just share a couple of details for the in-person folks in particular before I hand it over to the beginning of the program. I'm Rachel Klima. I'm the director of the Lunar Surface Innovation Consortium, and I'm very, very happy to welcome you here. If you need the restroom, they are outside and to the right. If you need anything, come find any of us on the team. We can help you out. We're working really hard to draw new people into the community, and that means some folks may not have the same space background as others, so I ask that as you mingle with one another, you kind of share and welcome them and try to make this as friendly and exciting an event for them as possible. If you are going to have lunch from the food truck, please order it online ahead of time if you can, because we don't want everybody standing out there. We don't need 200 people in line. There are power strips on the floor. Do not trip over those. And finally, we're doing questions for this meeting through Slido, and the purpose of that is to allow the folks that are online to also contribute questions on sort of an equal playing field. So we're going to do moderation with those questions. For the first few talks, I'll be sitting to the side and asking a selection of the questions to the speakers, but we will also capture all of those questions, and we will get the answers for you to any that we don't have time to answer. So if you submit them, sometimes there is a little lag in them coming through as well. We'll make sure that we can find you the answers that you need. So with that, I was extra fast. So we're gonna have 5 extra minutes, everyone. I would like to introduce, first of all, Jason Callery, who is the Missionary Executive for Civil Space at APL, and then he will pass the floor to our new sector head, Bobby Braun. So, thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. Thank you, Rachel. I think it's been a little more than 2 years since we hosted an LSIC conference here at APL, so I want to welcome everyone back to APL, and we can take advantage of this wonderful new building we have here, Building 201, we call it. This is where a lot of the research that cuts across all of the Applied Physics Lab occurs in our Research and Exploratory Development Department. A wonderful facility, and looking forward to interacting with everyone over the next couple of days. We've got a couple hundred people here and many more online, and it's been remarkable to see the growth in the Lunar Surface Innovation Consortium. So Rachel asked me to speak a little bit about the broader work happening at the lab that supports NASA. LSII and LSIC are very important parts of our civil space program, but we also do a lot of work with NASA's Science Mission Directorate, and so I was happy to do that, provide a little bit of context, and I'll be here during the 2 days, so if anything that I say piques anybody's interest and you want to partner and collaborate on anything, please let me know. So I always like to start with a little bit of history. A lot of the research labs in the United States got underway in the middle of the last century. Of course, this was a time of turmoil. We were in the midst of World War II. This is a picture of one of the major developments from World War II. It's a picture of a V-2 rocket. The Germans launched thousands of these rockets, and these were, of course, weapons of destruction at the time. After the war, both the US and Russia got their hands on some of these V-2 rockets and began experimenting with them, and a curiosity set in on how we might be able to use these kinds of vehicles to expand scientific discovery and exploration in other dimensions. And so some of these launches were actually happening from White Sands, New Mexico, and some of APL's earliest scientists and engineers. APL was established in 1942, right around this time. Some of APL's first scientists and engineers were asked to serve on review boards and advisory committees for where these launches were happening. And one of the early ideas was to put a small 16-millimeter camera on one of these V-2 rockets as it was launching. And what I'm about to show you is the actual video of that launch. And so this rocket actually exceeded the von Karman line and flew into space. And this is the footage from that 16-millimeter camera. And you can see this beautiful panorama of the limb of planet Earth taken from this video. And so this is actually the first image of a planet that was ever taken from space, and it was taken by the Johns Hopkins University Applied Physics Lab. And so APL as an organization, wasn't necessarily set up for space exploration, but I like to say that space exploration has been in our DNA since our founding days, just a few years after the lab was established. We didn't miss a beat right after that. About a decade after that, there was a seminal moment where the Russians launched the first artificial Earth satellite, Sputnik, of course. This was a wake-up call to the country, wake-up call to the nation. And a lot of people started investigating, trying to understand what this satellite was doing, where this satellite was headed. APL scientists and engineers were a part of those investigations and were able to immediately track this spacecraft and be able to kind of predict where the spacecraft is going to be. In fact, initially they thought that there might be something broken or malfunctioning within the spacecraft because the frequencies were kind of oscillating in a strange way, but they were very quickly able to link this to the Doppler effect. And so you were basically seeing the spacecraft as it was coming overhead and as it was receding. But then they had the intuition to flip that problem around, right? So if you know exactly where the spacecraft is, you can actually use the spacecraft to tell you where you are, right? And that's a very important question because, for example, if you want to pinpoint the locations of our submarines and other vehicles across the ocean, that could be an important data point. And so APL immediately began kind of reverse engineering this problem, and within the same year began designing and building the first experimental satellite navigation system. We call this the transit system. And just a couple years later, they had constellations of these spacecraft that were launched as a part of the transit system. And this basically became the precursor to modern-day global positioning system, and is one of the 9 defining innovations of APL over our nearly 80-year history. So if we fast forward to today, APL is the largest university-affiliated research center in the country. We have 14 of these organizations across the U.S. These are strategic organizations linked with an academic institution, so we're one of the divisions of Johns Hopkins University, and we maintain and provide critical capabilities to support the U.S. government. We have a lot of different sponsors, a lot of different agencies within the Department of Defense that we work with across APL. I'm in charge of the civil space program, where almost all of the work that we do is in support of NASA, and even within NASA, it's really the Science Mission Directorate and the Space Technology Mission Directorate, like the LSIC consortium. This is a view of our campus right now. This is kind of a view from this building, almost from this building, looking north. So beautiful campus here. We also have some satellite campuses across the country. We have about 8,000 staff across the lab. We've had a significant amount of growth in the last few years. And our vision at the lab is to create defining innovations that ensure our nation's preeminence in the 21st century. This is a very important vision statement. We're fairly selective in the type of work that we take on at APL, and we try and matrix any new opportunity against this vision statement and decide what we want to pick up. There are several different ways to kind of characterize the organizational structure of APL. One of the sponsor-facing units of the lab are called mission areas, and so there are 12 mission areas at APL. So if you want to kind of get a sense of the kind of work that's happening at APL, you can just read the titles of these mission areas. Mission areas are responsible for executing all of the work that we bring in, also for winning new work and competing for and being directed new work where we can provide something that the government needs, managing internal investments and things of that source. The mission areas are also grouped into sectors. So I'm a part of the space exploration sector. Bobby Braun is the head of the space exploration sector. There are 2 mission areas in the sector, civil space and also national security space. And all of these mission areas get together frequently, roughly once a week, once every 2 weeks. We're all sitting together, sharing ideas, sharing technologies that might be developed elsewhere at the lab and seeing how they can influence our civil space program. So the framework that we have for developing space science missions, which is the biggest piece of our civil space program, is first off, it's a science-driven organization, but it's integrated within what's effectively a full NASA mission management framework. So that starts with research. So we have over 150 very active space scientists in the space exploration sector that are pushing scientific discovery, identifying the big challenges and the questions that we want to go after in our space exploration program. But then within the lab, we've got the capabilities to conceive, design, build, test, operate highly complex, think $1 billion plus large NASA space science missions, as well as instruments for those missions. Strategic partnerships are key to the success of this cycle, and so we partner with industry and other organizations, other NASA centers, academia throughout this process. And that reach back that we have to the rest of the lab really enables some unique opportunities for us. So if you look across several of our missions, Messenger planetary discovery mission that went to Mercury, or Parker Solar Probe, or the DART mission that we just launched, I'll say a little bit more about these through the presentation. But all of these leverage some piece of technology or some piece of capability that was developed elsewhere at the lab, and we were able to find a purpose for it to enable innovation for a NASA program. So let me hit on two themes today that are kind of the core pillars of our civil space program at APL. The first one is solar and space physics. So this refers to heliophysics is another word for solar and space physics. This is a study of the sun and how the sun is influencing our solar system, impacting our planet as well as our heliosphere. So first, the sun is the lifeblood of our solar system, right? The sun it's 99.8% of the mass of our solar system. Energy generation in the sun is equivalent to billions of hydrogen bombs going off every second for billions of years. And so the Earth and other planets in our solar system are really at the mercy of what the sun decides to do and what happens on the sun. And so this is a big focus of our program here. Here's a little animation that shows the flow of radiation and solar wind and energetic particles from the sun that's moving into all different dimensions of space. And fortunately, our planet has a magnetic field, and that magnetic field protects our planet from this harmful radiation. But occasionally the sun can have a coronal mass ejection or a solar flare where you get millions of tons of plasma shooting out at a high speed that impacts our planet. It can overwhelm this magnetic field. We've had several cases of that. In fact, just recently, I think everybody probably knows, there were 40 SpaceX Starlink satellites that didn't reach their orbit because of some thermospheric expansion that resulted from a space weather event. So we're very interested in studying this phenomenon and finding ways to predict it and forecast it, right? To bring space weather forecasting up to the kind of level that terrestrial weather forecasting has evolved to over the last decades. And so this is a big part of our program here. And so I want to point out two new developments at APL. So one is NASA asked us to develop a gap analysis for space weather, that is, identify those assets that we have in space right now that are either reaching the end of their life or new assets that we need within the Sun-Earth system to be able to better predict and forecast space weather. And so we recently developed a gap analysis. You can find it online that advocates for the kind of technologies, the kind of measurements that we need. And this will be considered by the Solar and Space Physics Decadal Survey, which is underway right now. And the second is a recent win of a DRIVE initiative, really a center of excellence called the Center for Geospace Storms, where we're trying to develop the kind of the state-of-the-art model for being able to predict this space weather phenomenon. We were just awarded this project a couple of months ago, and it's a multi-year, it's a 5-year project. Very, very strong, broad partnerships across the community for this. We also love to build spacecraft that can study the sun and study the sun from different vantage points. This is a view of a spacecraft that we built and launched in August 2018 for NASA called Parker Solar Probe. This is a $1 billion mission. It's been something that the science community has been calling for more than a half century, but we really lack the technology and the innovation to be able to build a spacecraft that could literally fly through the outer atmosphere of the sun. So just to put this in perspective, right, typically for space weather research and research in heliophysics, we're looking at the sun from 93 million miles away, right? And Parker Solar Probe is designed to fly within 3.8 million miles of the sun's surface. And the sun is 1 million miles across, so flying 3.8 million miles from the sun is pretty incredible. And it's a marvel of engineering. That thermal shield that you see right there, that's a 8-foot carbon composite shield that can reach temperatures of 2,500 degrees while protecting the spacecraft and keeping all of the instruments and electronics at room temperature. So this spacecraft has been very successful. We launched it in August 2018. Right now it's orbiting just shy of 5.5 million miles from the sun's surface. Over the next couple of years, it's going to dive in even closer to the sun and eventually end up at 3.8 million miles. There have been more than 600 research papers published from Parker Solar Probe data and really new insights on understanding solar phenomenon with an in situ investigation at the source of that phenomenon as opposed to 93 million miles away. Following Parker Solar Probe, we have another heliophysics mission that we're building right now at APL called the Interstellar Mapping and Acceleration Probe. This is a partnership with Princeton University. The PI is from Princeton University, as well as many other organizations that are contributing, providing instruments and other subsystems to the mission. IMAP is a great follow-on from Parker Solar Probe. It's a mission that's going to orbit at the first Lagrange point at L1, and it's a mission that's designed to study the solar wind that comes from the sun, passes past Earth, and travels all the way out to the outskirts of the heliosphere. And through the spinning spacecraft, we're able to essentially build a very high-resolution map of the outer heliosphere of our solar system. And that's a boundary that really represents a kind of a protection that our solar system has from the rest of the Milky Way galaxy. And there's a lot of uncertainty on what the shape of that heliosphere looks like. But we can also do this with IMAP as a system level experiment. We have 10 different instruments on IMAP. And so within the same mission, we're able to study energetic particles and ions and dust over a very broad energy range. So this is a mission that's being built at APL right now and will be launching in February of 2025. We have our critical design review coming up later this year for this mission. Very quickly, a new mission that we have is called EASY, the Electrojet Zeeman Imaging Explorer. This is a small mission, a very innovative mission that is a strong partnership with industry as well as with JPL, where we're flying 3 CubeSats and on a kind of a pearls of string configuration, and these 3 spacecraft are going to study both temporal behavior and dynamical behavior in the upper atmosphere of the Earth, where we see very energetic processes driven by the interaction of solar radiation and our atmosphere. This is a mission for which we have a preliminary design review coming up later this month, in fact. And then finally, one of the things that we enjoy doing for NASA is formulating new concepts. And so NASA has actually asked us to study a mission concept that also the community has been asking for a long time as an input to the Solar and Space Physics Decadal Survey that's getting underway. And we call this mission Interstellar Probe, which is a fascinating, inspirational mission to take humanity's first intentional steps into interstellar space with a modern set of instruments and fly through this heliospheric region and study it in detail. And we've just completed our study for Interstellar Probe and delivered that to NASA, and it'll be evaluated as a part of the Decadal Survey. And the goal here is really to do cross-disciplinary science, astrophysics science, planetary science, and heliophysics science, travel out to 500 astronomical units, do exciting science on the way to getting into interstellar space, and also when we get to that vantage point, and through multiple generations. This is a spacecraft that's meant to survive for, say, 50 years and serve the interests of multiple science generations. The other big pillar of our civil space program at APL is planetary science. Planetary science is the largest piece of NASA's Science Mission Directorate. It's a very, very important and strategic part of our portfolio as well. Let me start with our most recent launch, DART. So DART is the Double Asteroid Redirection Test. This is NASA's first planetary defense program. Planetary defense is a new program line that stood up at NASA to achieve several goals. One is to find all near-Earth asteroids and just catalog them. 2 is to learn about them and figure out what their characteristics are, what their sizes are, what their compositions are, what their orbits are. So if one of them were to impact Earth, we would be able to anticipate what the damage could be. And then 3rd is to do something about it, right? So if we had an asteroid that was hurtling towards planet Earth, have a technology that's ready to be able to mitigate an asteroid strike of Earth and potentially save the planet and certainly save life. And we're bombarded by asteroids all the time, and so this is an important technology. So we came up with a concept called DART, the Double Asteroid Redirection Test, that's targeting an asteroid that does not pose a threat to Earth. It's an asteroid that's orbiting the sun. It's actually a binary asteroid system. We've got a large asteroid and a small asteroid. The small one's about 150 meters across. DART is a spacecraft that right now is traveling at almost 14,000 miles an hour. It's going to hit that small asteroid, and on September 26th of this year, for the first time, humanity is going to move a rock in space. So this is really, really exciting. It's a scalable experiment. We've got other technologies we want to study that have been advocated for through the Decadal Survey, but DART is a great example of an innovative, low-cost planetary exploration program. Let me show you a little trailer of DART. Okay, there you go. So DART's on its way. We're only a few months away from impact on September 26th. You saw in that video, by the way, there's a number of new technologies on the DART spacecraft that we haven't flown before, such as the rollout solar arrays that you saw, as well as some other things. And the terminal impact is very exciting for DART. It's again one of these examples where we leverage technologies that were developed by the air and missile defense sector at APL to autonomously course correct the spacecraft as it approaches its target. DART will actually only see the smaller of the two asteroids, the one that it's intended to target, just a little bit before impact, and the spacecraft will autonomously go in there. We're not joysticking it or anything. It'll find the small object, find the centroid, hit that small object. So really, really innovative, exciting mission. And so you'll be hearing a lot more about that over the coming months. Finally, I'll close by talking about, I think, what I believe to be one of the most exciting areas of all of space science, and that's the study of habitability in the universe and the search for life in the universe. If you go back a few decades, right, you look at a beautiful picture of planet Earth and you see its distinctive ocean, and for a long time we thought that the Earth was unique because it had an ocean. It turns out that that's not the case. The Earth has a surface ocean, but there are many objects in the solar system that have oceans. It's just they happen to be subsurface oceans. More recently, we've even seen evidence from Hubble Space Telescope observations and Cassini observations of these oceans venting through fissures that are created on the surface of these because of the tidal pulls of the large planets that the moons orbit. And so here are a few examples. So Europa, that's one of the nearest ocean worlds to us. It's a moon that orbits Jupiter. It has twice the volume of water as Earth. Titan, which is the largest moon that orbits Saturn, has 14 times Earth's volume. And Enceladus, which is a very small moon that orbits Saturn, where Cassini saw evidence of this water spewing into space. So we're involved through a number of partnerships in a number of different missions that are destined to explore these ocean worlds. And it's really a part of an astrobiology campaign that goes from understanding habitability, whether or not these worlds could be habitable, understanding the chemistry on these worlds prior to the biology set in. So if you look at a world like Titan, we actually believe it to be kind of an early analog of Earth before the biology set in. So you can kind of go back in time and see what this world was like. And then actually doing the astrobiology, right? Let's actually tasting some of this material that's coming out of these oceans and figuring out whether or not there is life on these worlds. So the first one is Europa Clipper. This is a very large mission. It's one of the largest programs at NASA, a strategic partnership between the Jet Propulsion Lab, which is the lead, and the Applied Physics Lab, APL, which is a partner on this mission. APL's contributions to Europa Clipper include developing the propulsion module, developing the RF communications system, and also being in charge of the solar array development. And we're also developing 3 instruments for Europa Clipper, including the primary imaging camera. We call it the Europa Imaging System. It's actually two instruments in one, the wide-angle camera and the narrow-angle camera. And so all of this work has been developed. All of this has been one of our largest programs in civil space over the last 5 years. We're actually at the tail end of that development. In less than a week, we're going to be shipping the propulsion system and the RF module to our colleagues at JPL. And in about a month, a little more than a month, we're going to be delivering 2 of the science instruments. We've already shipped one to Europa Clipper, and then everything gets integrated on the spacecraft, and late in 2024, Europa Clipper will launch. Dragonfly is the second mission there. I'll speak about that just in a second. I've got a little video on it. The third one I'll forward to, Enceladus Orbilander. This is a concept, so this is not an approved mission yet, but this is a concept that we formulated here at APL in the last 2 years to develop a spacecraft that would not only orbit around Saturn's moon Enceladus, where we see this water spewing into space, but it would also land. So we call it Orbilander because it orbits and lands. And then when it lands, it does a very high signal-to-noise astrobiology experiment sampling that water. And so this is a mission that we submitted to the Decadal Survey and was very highly ranked by the Decadal Survey. So hopefully in the coming decade, 2 decades, this is a mission that we can fly at NASA. Just on Dragonfly, let me show you this beautiful video of a view of Dragonfly. So this is a nuclear-powered dual quadcopter. It's about the size of your car. It's about 11 feet across. And we'll spin up the rotors right as we enter the thick atmosphere of Titan. So Titan's an exotic world, not only because it has an atmosphere that's thicker than Earth, but it also has a lower surface gravity. So if you combine those two things, it's the perfect place to fly. Dragonfly is loaded with scientific instruments. So the spacecraft will come in, or the rotorcraft will come in, it'll land on a safe place autonomously. And then we've got a drill, so we can drill into Titan soil and sample that soil. We have a mass spectrometer, we have seismometers, we've got a weather station on board, we've got imaging cameras. We also have a gamma ray neutron spectrometer to do compositional analysis on the surface. Once we're done with a given location, we'll spin up the rotors, the spacecraft will fly to its next destination, and over the course of about 3 years, we'll traverse a couple hundred kilometers on Titan and explore the geological diversity and the prebiotic chemistry of this really exotic world. So Dragonfly is a mission that was selected a couple years ago. We're in the design phase of it right now. We have our preliminary design review coming up later this year. And our plan is to launch this mission in the summer of 2027. It'll take about 6 or 7 years to get to Titan, and then we start our scientific exploration in 2033 for a period of 3 years. So very, I think one of the most exciting NASA science missions that's ever been competitively selected, and we're really proud and happy to be leading this project. That was a very quick snapshot of some of the work that we do in civil space here at APL. We have a beautiful new website that I encourage people to visit, civspace.jhu.apl.edu. You can see a lot of our innovation in our technology and our engineering and our science, as well as some of the instruments and some of the other missions that we're developing. Okay, I will stop with that. Thank you, everyone. So with that, I'd like to introduce Dr. Bobby Braun. Bobby's my boss. He's the head of the space exploration sector at APL. He joined us just recently and has dove right in, and has been a pleasure to work with him and learn from him. And Bobby's going to introduce our next keynote speaker.
Thank you, Jason. It's great to be here with you all today. I'm excited to learn about some of space technology's most critical contributions to NASA's Artemis program and to getting back to the moon. What you all are doing here is fantastic, and appreciate you all being here and the work that's going on. Thank you, Jim, for all that. It's my distinct pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker and welcome NASA Associate Administrator Bob Cabana to APL. I've had the honor of learning from Bob over the years, and I wasn't going to miss this opportunity because I've tried to emulate his sincere and dedicated leadership style in my own leadership. To me, Bob epitomizes the phrase national service. Service to the nation through decades in the Marine Corps and as a naval aviator, service to the nation as a NASA astronaut, director of the Kennedy Space Center, and now as the agency's associate administrator. Bob Cabana has dedicated his life to the service of our country and to furthering our understanding of our place in the universe. He's a true American hero. A veteran of 4 space shuttle flights, Bob served as a shuttle pilot twice and a mission commander twice. His 4th flight delivered the Unity module to orbit, integrating it with the Zarya module that was already there, and together beginning what we have since called the International Space Station. Following his retirement from the Marine Corps in September 2000, Bob served in numerous leadership positions at the Johnson Space Center, ultimately becoming the deputy director. In October of 2007, he was appointed as director of the Stennis Space Center in Mississippi. And a year later, he became the 10th director of the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. And this is where our paths crossed. I first met Bob while he was the Kennedy director, and I personally witnessed his leadership capability, his compassion for others, and his humble dedication in service to the nation. There you go. Many of you know that I was the chief technologist at NASA in 2010 and 2011. And while I was focused on charting a path for technology at that time, it was not lost on me that it was an extremely difficult period for all of us in the human spaceflight community, and in particular for the folks in Florida. At that time, we knew the space shuttle was to be retired, but we didn't know exactly what was going to replace it. We had all kinds of ideas, and there was a lot of discussion about it, but there was a bit of chaos. I was and remain in awe of Bob's work at Kennedy Space Center during that time frame. He envisioned and implemented a bold new future for a NASA center that could otherwise have been on a course to irrelevance. He not only supported the burgeoning commercial space sector, but at the same time, he grew NASA's own infrastructure and capabilities at that storied location, laying the groundwork for taking a NASA center to the next level and bringing launch dominance back to the United States. Today, we all benefit from Bob's efforts and those of his team, as KSC has become the world's foremost multi-user spaceport, with launches, it seems, almost every day, from several launch pads with all different kinds of customers and a broad suite of launch vehicles. That was the plan back in 2010, but I couldn't see it. Bob could. And this capability will only continue to grow. So now it's an exciting time for our space community. Launch is something that we're going to have much more of, and it's allowing us to talk about what's next: sending humans to the moon, exploring deep space. And much of that is due in no small part to the hard work, leadership, and service of Bob Cabana. We're so glad he's here with us today to talk about the coming decade of lunar exploration and what we can do now to create a bright future on the moon, much like he created in Florida. Please join me in welcoming NASA Associate Administrator and my friend, Bob Cabana.
Bobby, you're way too kind. I am blessed to be part of this amazing team, and it truly was a team effort getting us to where we are today. And I think APL is blessed to have Bobby. He's a great leader and a great innovator. And Jason, I absolutely loved your talk. All right, I can't believe all the cool stuff. This is my first time coming to APL. I know that's hard to believe, but the human spaceflight folks don't get up here a whole lot. And one of the neatest things about being the NASA Associate Administrator is I get to be responsible for everything NASA's doing now. And it's really cool to see all the innovative stuff. I really enjoyed all the heliophysics stuff. I was a math major and an engineer and aero guy at heart, but I will say on my first space flight, we deployed Ulysses into polar orbit around the sun. And it had 11 experiments on board to study the sun from a new perspective, being in polar orbit around the sun. And it lasted for 18 years. It got to see the sun at a solar minimum and a solar maximum. And that was really cool. So, it's amazing what we continue to learn. And that's what it's all about. I mean, that's what NASA's about. That's what we're doing. It's about exploring our boundaries beyond our home planet, establishing a presence in the solar system, eventually the universe, beyond planet Earth, right? And that's what we're trying to make happen. And I'm really pleased that I'm here for this Lunar Surface Innovation Conference, because we are going back to the moon, and we are going in a sustainable way with the Artemis program. And my slide clicker. So why are we going to the moon? We're going to the moon to learn how to live on other worlds, right? It's a stepping stone. It's someplace close. It's an extreme environment. And if we can learn how to live and operate there, we can carry that forward. And of course, the ultimate goal is going to Mars. But we're going with Artemis. And I think all of you know this. Artemis was the twin sister of Apollo. Apollo is what took us to the moon the first time. And now we're going with the Artemis program. And just as Apollo changed the world, back in the 60s and 70s, Artemis is going to do the same today, only even more so, because we've got more ambitious goals. And as I said, the Apollo guys, that was a 2 or 3 day camping trip on the moon, right? We're going to stay. We're going in a sustainable way, and we're going to put the first woman, the first person of color on the moon. We're going as who we are as a nation. Everyone's represented. I often got asked, what's the major contribution of the shuttle program to America's space program? And after 30 years, it was pretty darn amazing when you think of all the science missions and everything else. But to me, one of its most important accomplishments was that it brought diversity to America's space program. If you look at that first class of astronauts in 1978, there were men, women, Hispanic, Asian, black, white. You know, it was, everybody was represented, whereas the Apollo program, you know, it started off as a bunch of white male test pilots with a few scientists thrown in at the end, right? So, you know, this is how we're going to the moon now. Everybody is going, and I think it's going to be awesome. Just near-term plans, I want to lay this out. First off, we're going with robotic scouts, all right? Eventually, Artemis 1, and I'm going to get into more detail in all of these. Artemis 1, of course, is the uncrewed test flight of the Orion vehicle. Artemis 2 takes humans to the moon. Much like Apollo 8, we're not going to land, a complete checkout of the vehicle with crew. And then Artemis 3, we will be landing on the moon. Artemis 4 is going to be launching a gateway module, the International Habitability Module, and will continue to expand and grow in a cooperative way. And that's the other thing. As we go back to the moon, we're not just going as the United States. We're going in an international cooperative effort, and that's how it's supposed to be when we explore, right? And it's not just industry or commercial. It's, again, it's a cooperative effort. If we're going to be successful, we need our commercial partners in industry and NASA all working together, and everybody has a role to play. And that's why I think these CLPS missions are so cool. You know, so CLPS, Commercial Lunar Payload Services, right? NASA put out some money, it's through Science Mission Directorate, and these companies that are building these landers to go to the moon, the money that they got from NASA doesn't cover the full cost of it. I was down at Intuitive Machines down in Houston, Texas, talking with Steve Altimus, who used to work for me. Now he's running this company, and he's going to the moon. And he's got other payloads on there that he is taking to the moon, and he's actually making money on this flight with all the payloads that he's taking as well as what NASA's paying for. Again, a cooperative effort. And when I look at the science that are on these landers, you know, Jim Reuter and his team have just done an awesome job with the tipping points. And I look at how they have evolved and what is going on. And this is what this conference is all about. It's lunar initiatives, right? Surface. What are we going to do when we get there? How do we create what needs to be done? And I really got to give the administrator credit. I don't know if all of you have listened to his testimony from yesterday, but he says we need more money for technology development. And man, I'm 100% behind that. We do. You know, this is the future, right? All right, you guys need more money, right? If we're going to be innovative and do great things when we get there, we got to learn about how we're going to live, how we're going to use in situ resource utilization, and so on. And it's developing those technologies. So I'm really looking forward to a bright future. Now, when we go to the moon, again, the stages, we're going in a methodical way. We have laid out a plan, all right? And I want to talk more about that. Again, the ultimate goal, once we get to the moon, it's to learn what we need to do to operate to be able to go on to Mars. And although it's not exactly the same on the moon as it is on Mars when we look at in situ resource utilization and so on, much of what we do is directly adaptable. And I'd rather be 2 or 3 days from home and run into issues than 6 to 8 months. So we have a lot to learn before we can actually go on to Mars. We have a lot to learn to be sustainable on the lunar surface. But as I said, we start out with our initial Artemis missions. We get that first landing, we have Gateway in operation, and we continue to build on that, eventually getting to rovers on the moon, habitable space on the moon, habitability modules, habitable rovers on the moon, and staying from short stays to essentially longer stays. You know, Artemis Base Camp, to actually stay on the moon, and we're going to the poles too. You know, if you look at the orbit that Gateway is in, it's in this, distant retrograde orbit that allows access anywhere on the lunar surface, okay? And we want to go to the poles, as you all know, because of the tons of water ice that's there. And it's water to drink, it's air to breathe, it's fuel for rockets. And we've got a lot to learn. And that's, you know, like Viper is on one of these CLPS missions going to the South Pole to actually look into what is there? How do we mine it? We're going to look at different areas in that South Pole. And that's a pretty extreme environment on the South Pole of the moon because, Apollo went all around the equator. At the South Pole of the moon, there's more craters, there's more extreme land environment, but also, down inside those craters, they're in constant shade as it's extremely cold, or in the sun, it can get extremely hot. So being able to adapt to live in that environment, to be able to mine the resources, we have a lot to do to make that successful. As I said, the goal is Mars, right? So we're in the process of laying out this architecture, and we've briefed it to our stakeholders on the Hill. We briefed it at the Space Conference Space Symposium in Colorado to our international partners and our industry partners. But we are laying out what is it that we need to know and learn on the moon in order to be successful going to Mars. And there's still a lot that we have to learn on the International Space Station, all right? And we're doing this gap analysis to see where we need to invest our resources. If I look at the International Space Station, right now it has an environmental control system that is about 93% efficient in being able to recycle the urine and the humidity and everything, as well as the air. So it's constantly being replenished with water and oxygen and nitrogen in order to keep the crew alive up there. If we want to be successful going to Mars, and I think all of you know, in propulsion technology, this is something else that Administrator Nelson, Senator Nelson said in his testimony was, we need to look at nuclear. We need nuclear power for electricity to generate on the surface. We need nuclear for transportation. With current propulsion technology, a Martian mission, it's like 6 to 8 months to get there, another 6 to 8 months on the planet's surface before you can get the planets aligned for another 6 to 8 month trip home. And it depends on if you're doing a conjunction or an opposing. There are all kinds of different orbits. Your times, you can stay on the moon for 30 days and have a 400-day trip on a spacecraft, or you can stay on the moon 500 days and have a shorter trip on the spacecraft. So there's trades that we're going to have to make. The bottom line is we've got a lot to learn in order to be successful, and we're looking at having an environmental control system at least 98% effective to be able to keep folks alive for that period of time. I've also seen where we got to pre-stage like 18 metric tons of supplies and equipment on the Martian surface before we can send humans. So developing the systems, the environmental control systems, the Transhab, and so on, this is work that we're doing in low Earth orbit. It's work that we need to do on this distant retrograde orbit around the moon also, where we're outside the Earth's magnetosphere, where we can actually look at the impacts of radiation on the environment that we build and how we keep crews alive for that long trip to and from Mars. So again, the reason for going to the moon is to learn how to survive, to go on beyond the moon, beyond Earth, establishing that foothold in our solar system. How many of you guys watch like science fiction? How many have watched The Expanse on I think it's on Amazon? Yeah, they're season 5 now, and it's a little bit hokey in some places where they got to those holes that take you to other universes and stuff. But and how they got to the propulsion technology to actually do that. But what it talks about is, the basic premise is you got people living on Earth, people living on the moon, people living on Mars, and people living out in the asteroid belt, right? Well, that's establishing that presence beyond our home planet. That's the future, and mining asteroids and so on. So, when I look at where we are in our space program right now and what we've accomplished, I am so excited about our future. There is just so much cool stuff going on. And I'm not talking just human spaceflight. Look at all the science missions that Jason was talking about, and he's just talking about APL. Let's throw in the folks at Goddard working on stuff, and all those folks out at JPL, in addition to Advanced Physics Lab. It's absolutely, the science is just awesome, and all that feeds into our knowledge of our solar system, our universe, and how we continue to survive. Boy, this is slow or not working for me. I talked about, how what we're learning on the moon transitions to Mars and that gap analysis. Now it's working really fast. We'll get this figured out. So Artemis is a foundation for deep space, all right? And each one of these elements is lays into how we are going to do this in a sustainable way. And so let's talk a little bit about Artemis 1. And this is down at the Kennedy Space Center right now. I was there when that core stage rolled off the barge after completing its green run test at the Stennis Space Center in Mississippi. And this is one big rocket. When it got into transfer aisle, I went in there and I took my selfie with the rocket behind me and everything. But when you stand in the vehicle assembly building and look at this rocket in the high bay, in High Bay 3, it's absolutely amazing. There's the mobile launcher for it. And we're building a rocket even bigger than this when we get to Artemis 4 and beyond. But this is the rocket in High Bay 3 of the vehicle assembly building. It's a little bit shorter than a Saturn V, all right? But it's got more thrust. Artemis 1 at liftoff has 8.8 million pounds of thrust. How many in here have seen a shuttle launch? Quite a few, all right? This is bigger than that. You know, when people come down to the Cape now and we're watching a Falcon 9 take off with crew on it, well, first off, anytime a rocket ship leaves planet Earth, I don't care what's on it, humans, science, whatever, it's an event. It's something that you experience. It's not just visual, it's emotional, it's sight, sound, and feel, and it's really cool. But I tell folks now, it's going to lift off majestically. Nice and slow. You know, the shuttle got up and left town with those solid rocket motors. I mean, the launch was just a sense of speed and acceleration. You're being pushed back in your seat and it's all vibrating and it just gets off and goes. And all those pops and crackles that you hear watching it, you hear those in the cockpit too. And it's just amazing. And then you get off the solids and it's like electric drive on those three main engines. Well, those were 4-segment solids with 3 SSMEs. We had 16 of those engines left over after the shuttle program that were in storage at the Stennis Space Center. They've got new engine controllers on them. They've been refurbished, redone. And so we have 4 of those engines on the core stage of the Space Launch System, better than a third of a million pounds of thrust in each one. And then instead of 4-segment solids, these are the same steel casings that were used during the shuttle program with a new nozzle. But instead of 4 segments, they're 5-segment solids. This thing is going to be amazing when it lifts off. I can't wait later this year when that happens. That's the rocket out at the pad for wet dress rehearsal. Now, I'm sure you all know that we were unable to complete wet dress. We didn't get the interim cryopropulsion stage fully fueled, and we never got into stable replenishment with the core stage. We ran into some issues. We had a valve problem on the inertial interim cryopropulsion upper stage, and we had a problem with the nitrogen. This thing uses a huge amount of nitrogen during its launch preparations, and the system wasn't able to support it. And we had a new system in place that met the requirements for the Block 1B engine, SLS, the bigger rocket. What we've done is, after we got crew launched to the International Space Station here last Wednesday, Crew 4 went on their way up to ISS. Took the range down for a 2-week period in order to bring the new system online so that we can support the wet dress rehearsal and launch of the Space Launch System. So we're back in the vehicle assembly building. We're making repairs. We also had a hydrogen leak. If you look down at the base of the rocket, you can kind of see 2 little silver gray areas sticking up. Those things are huge. They probably stand almost as tall as this room that we're in. Those are the tail service mass units where the oxygen and hydrogen is flowed into the vehicle, and we had a hydrogen leak within the hydrogen line that was inside there. And so they've already completed the repair of that. They found the issue. We're doing a few other things, but as soon as this new nitrogen system's online, we complete the initial repairs, we're gonna roll back out to the pad and complete wet dress rehearsal, count all the way down to T0, make sure that we get into final launch count and that everything is going well. We'll roll back into the vehicle assembly building for some final processing and stuff, and then we're gonna roll out for launch. So that is coming, and it's gonna be awesome. Then that will be a complete checkout of the vehicle and the Orion capsule in this. We're gonna go further from the moon than we've ever gone before with a human spacecraft, and 21 days or so, we'll get it back home, and then we'd start getting ready for Artemis 2. Now, Artemis 2 is already being built. It's in the high bay in Lockheed Martin's facility at the Kennedy Space Center. It looks great. You can see the pictures there. The European Service Module is at KSC being processed in the checkout facility. There's a great shot of the heat shield. That's a unique design on that heat shield too. When we flew the first test flight, Exploration Flight Test 1, we had a monolithic heat shield. And we learned from that flight, and we've gone to this, it's the same material, but put on in blocks as opposed to one monolithic piece. This was much less expensive to manufacture and much easier to install and check out. So this is going to be a great test. When we did EFT-1, that re-entered at something like 80% of the re-entry velocity from a lunar mission when it went out and came back down into the atmosphere. This will again be a complete test of that heat shield on Artemis 1. And then there's the core stage for Artemis 2 at the Michoud facility. Here you can see the interim cryopropulsion upper stage as well as the vehicle stage adapter. So it's real hardware, it's being built. Now, Artemis 1 launches here in 2022. We cannot launch Artemis 2 until 2024. Why 2 years between the missions if we got all this hardware? And the issue is that we don't have enough. Decisions were made in the past that we would use avionics boxes that are in Artemis 1 for Artemis 2 to save money. And so we got to get Artemis 1 launched and back and then disassembled to get to the boxes. And you can't complete building Artemis 2 until you get those boxes out of Artemis 1 into Artemis 2 and then check them out in Artemis 2. So that's why the 2-year delay between Artemis 1 and Artemis 2. And then we hope to get on a 1-year cycle after that. Artemis 3, landing on the moon. The pressure vessel's already built. Again, we've already started building all the hardware that we need to land humans on the moon. Here you can see the European Service Module for Artemis 3. And then we'll move on to Gateway, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about landers and going to the moon here in a minute. So Gateway, and again, science and technology, mission director is helping out with Gateway with the solar electric propulsion and the thrusters that we need. This is going to launch in 2024. The HALO, Habitability and Logistics Module, is being built by Northrop Grumman, and Maxar is building the solar electric propulsion element. It launches in 2024. That's the initial part of Gateway. As I mentioned on Artemis 4, we then launched the International Hab to dock with Gateway. And this will be a crew-tended, it will not be permanently crewed research module, if you will, operating station, operating around the moon, able to do remote science, as well as providing the docking module for Orion and the lander to have that access to and from the lunar surface. Here you can see the HALO that Northrop Grumman is building, Habitability and Logistics Outpost, and the great shot of the PPE in test. And that is going to be really cool. Jim tells me we're almost ready to have everything checked out for final assembly of the thrusters on that. Now, the human landing system. All right, as you all know, a year ago, a little more than a year ago, before I was at NASA headquarters, they let the contract for option A on a partnered contract with SpaceX to provide a human landing system. And this was what won. And it was the quickest way to get something to the lunar surface, trying to make that 2024 date. Obviously, we're not going to make 2024. So SpaceX is working to do an uncrewed test flight in 2024 with a crewed test in 2025. But this does not meet all the requirements for the vehicle that we need for services. We have gone out with another contract, another option for competition to provide another lander, another path to proceed down, and then that will develop a lander that meets our services needs. SpaceX has also received a contract to further develop the option A lander to meet the services needs. And once we have both of those options available to go, then we'll contract for lunar surfaces down the road. But we are going to be in a position where we have hopefully more than one lander with the ability to land on a yearly basis with crews on the moon. We're developing new suits, and we should be awarding here shortly a competition, a services competition to develop suits that replace the ancient suits that we have on the International Space Station, as well as provide a mobile suit for lunar surface operations. And it's really about time we upgraded those suits on the International Space Station. Plus, we want to have a suit that fits everybody. The suits that we are currently using, even the smallest one, it's very difficult for some females to be able to use that suit, and they're very demanding on the astronauts that are in them. We've had a lot of shoulder injuries from working in those suits. We need something that is fits everybody and is also much easier to use as far as mobility is concerned, especially for operations on the lunar surface. So we're looking forward to that. And then rovers. We're going to put rovers on the moon, so that we can get access to more than just how far you can walk, and eventually pressurized rovers and a pressurized habitat. And what, again, is the purpose of all this? It's to eventually get on to Mars. That's the future. I can't, again, think of a more exciting time to be in our nation's space program. And these guys, I was down in Houston when we announced this last class. I am so glad I got selected to be an astronaut when I did. There's no way in heck I could have competed with these guys. It is, and gals, it's absolutely amazing the backgrounds these folks have and the number of folks that applied. I can't remember what it was for this class, but the class before, they had like 18,000 applicants and they picked 12. Oh my gosh, so talk about interest in space and what we do. I often get asked, well, what do you think about all these commercial astronauts? And I'm not talking about commercial LEO, well, I will now. So I know we're talking about the moon and where we're going, but commercial plays a role in that too. And I do want to cover that just briefly since I mentioned it. But I think it's great that we're flying commercial astronauts. I think it's great that we're flying suborbital flights. Anything that generates an interest in what we do in space is absolutely outstanding. I'm a fan of history. I like to read a lot. And I look at where we are in the space program today, and I liken it to early aviation. If you think back, Orville and Wilbur flew that first flight in the Wright Flyer December 17th, 1903. It traveled a distance of 120 feet and lasted about 20 seconds. And aviation was on a really flat curve, right? And even after World War I, obviously, aviation had come a long way, but not that far. And it was the U.S. Postal Service that helped the government helped aviation get even better. But think back after the First World War, these guys that used to go out to the county fair and you paid $5 to see the farm from 2,000 feet in an old Jenny. Well, that's kind of like these suborbital flights, right? And when you think about folks flying across the Pacific in, the Pan Am Clipper, that was for the rich and famous, Folks like us were coming across in steerage on a steamer, going across the ocean. And that's kind of where space is. It's on that flat part of the curve, but aviation has taken off exponentially. And I believe, as you guys innovate and develop new technologies, and why we need more money for technology and development, is we want to be like aviation and take off exponentially with space too. And I think that's what's coming. So we got an awesome astronaut corps. They are ready to go. It's a diverse astronaut corps. It's just, I really envy these guys. And we are driven by our curiosity, right? The Earth is just a beautiful blue jewel of a planet. We need to keep it that way. But we also need to explore and we need to go beyond. And that's what we're going to do with the Artemis program. We got folks training in environments that simulate the moon down in the neutral buoyancy lab, simulating 1/6 gravity in a dark environment. We're doing everything we can with simulations on the moon. You saw those guys walking through that big crater out in Arizona, learning geology. By the way, one of the most fun things I did as an astronaut candidate, with my aero background and mechanical engineering and stuff, I just loved taking all the short courses that we got to take. I learned geology from Dr. Bill Muhlberger, who taught the Apollo astronauts. I went on this week-long field trip out in New Mexico with my class, and we're 10,000 feet above sea level looking at fossils of creatures that live below the ocean. And learning that firsthand is just invaluable. And it's just, there's so many cool things that you can learn. And that's what it's all about, learning and exploring. So we are going, all right? We're going back to the moon in a sustainable way, and we're going together with our commercial partners, our industry partners, our international partners, and with all of you providing the technology that we need to be successful. And hopefully I used all my time. Dang, I don't have time for any questions. But if you submit those questions online, we'll get them covered. Thank you. Thank you. Should I take one question? Is there any?
There is one quick one if you'd like to take, there is one, whether it's
All right,
quick
I'll
or
take
not is
one.
the question, right? So this comes from online and it says, what is NASA's definition of sustainable on the moon? A permanent human presence, economic sustainability, or something like ISRU sustainability? Whew,
Wow, so
tongue-tied.
initially sustainable is for, days, more than 2 or 3 days, weeks at a time, to months at a time. It's the ability to go there, reutilize it's maybe not permanently staying there with a specific set of people for a long period of time. We don't want to get stuck on the moon. We want to learn what we need to know in order to be able to move on to Mars, all right? And so it's learning how to stay there where it's safe, that you're utilizing the resources on the moon in a sustainable way, but also preparing the way for commercial efforts on the moon. I briefly mentioned commercial LEO, and I didn't get back to it. We are still learning on the International Space Station, and we have to plan a path forward to continue to do research in low Earth orbit so that we can work on that hard job of exploring beyond. But we are still learning things in space. We need a commercial LEO also, because we're still going to have to, want to do research in close to home, where you can get home in hours, right? And do science. But I think sustainability to me is the ability to go there, leave resources there where you can stay for extended periods of time, all right? To eventually months at a time on the surface, utilizing the resources on the moon. So we got to make that happen, all right? That's what your conference is about. Let's do that. Hey, again, thank you so much. Bobby, congratulations on your new position. Jim, I'm really proud of everything that you're doing in SCMD. Thank you so much for inviting me to come share with this group. I wish you the best for an outstanding conference and look forward to seeing the results. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was fantastic. So now I would like to introduce Jim Ryder, the Associate Administrator for Space Technology, who will dive a little deeper into some of these technology investments and what we're really doing to try to make this a reality. Welcome, Jim.
Yeah, thank you, Rachel, and thank everyone for joining us here today and for the next 2 days. I'm really excited and looking forward to it. I'll say it's a privilege to have Bob as the person I work for, and it's a joy, and I can't say enough about that. And I want to thank APL for running the consortium so effectively and hosting today, Bobby and Jason and so on. And if I remember right, I was here just a couple weeks ago, and Bob talked about that astronaut class. And I think there's one from APL on that class, and even a LSIC member, Andre. So right here among us, you all could be astronauts in the next class. So let's see. Oh, I do have charts. Is it possible for me to just say advance, and then I don't have to try to work this button that didn't seem to work that well? So what I thought I'd do is just talk a little bit about what's going on now. As part of our what we call Space Tech, the Space Technology Mission Directorate, and kind of go through a few things, and hopefully it'll be of interest. Next chart, please. What I'd say is for space technology, we pride ourselves for having a very broad distribution of programs and stuff. We address things from all the way from low technology readiness level, that's, you know, concepts in the lab, to the laboratory material level, to flying things. We have something like 1,500 projects or so as part of our portfolio that are active, about 400 or 500 university partnerships that we go through it, and about 140 things or so we're taking to flight. What we have done is, in order to try to help guide our investments, is we've developed what we call a strategic technology framework for what we have there. And I just introduced a little bit because actually tomorrow, when a lot of the sessions tomorrow is kind of going to get at this for a discussion. But for us then, what we've done as part of that framework, we have 3 leadership tenets, if you will. The first one is to ensure American global leadership in space technology. So, you know, the developments that we do, that are technologies that advance forward, that are cross-cutting, that all leads towards ensuring our global leadership. The second one is driving the space economy. We know that we believe technology is what drives that economy, and it's a key part of what we do. So it's a key part of why we're all here today, too. And then finally, to inspire. And to really, a big part of what we do is to inspire. In fact, you know, I would say one of the key things that, in order to ensure the sustained presence on the moon that Bob talked about, is we have to have inspired and engaged the entire community. If this is something that's in a couple of regions of the country, or if it's something that is kind of limited to what its scope is, then we won't get there, I don't think, and be able to stay. We'll get there, but we won't necessarily stay. So those 3 tenets are for leadership. Then what we've done is develop 4 strategic thrusts that guide our investments, and those are listed at the top there: rapid, safe, and efficient space transportation, which we call GO; expanded access to diverse surface destinations, which we call LAND; sustainable living and working farther from Earth, which we call LIVE; and then transformative missions and discoveries, which we call EXPLORE. So if you want to know what our strategic plan is for investments, it's GO, LAND, LIVE, EXPLORE. And you'll hear more about that this afternoon. So then what we did is we've developed these mission objectives or strategic objectives that go with each of those thrusts. There's 17 or so of these objectives, and they're what's guide our investment strategy. For those objectives, then we've gone through and identified what are the key capabilities that we need in order to meet those objectives. And they're sitting there in those circles around there. Those are kind of those key 13 or 14 capabilities that we need. And then from that, we've had our folks develop what we call envision future priorities and stuff. And I'll talk about that a little bit more than Walt tomorrow. We'll talk about it quite a bit, and the folks that we'll talk about it quite a bit more tomorrow as we go through it. So anyways, those objectives then map to what the agency is collecting in terms of objectives for blueprint objectives, I think is what we call them. And those are getting developed, and we're in straight in sync of those parts of our portfolio, at least, that also support Artemis. And then the final thing I'll say is then there's that big chunk there on blue. As Bob talked about, there's a lot of technologies that we can demonstrate and capabilities that we demonstrate on the moon that feed forward to us going to other planets, you know, specifically Mars for the nearer term. And those technologies are things that are part of this Lunar Surface Innovation Consortium. And we'll be talking about that as the time goes on. Next chart, please. Bob showed this chart, or at least a very similar version for it. He talked about intuitive machines. Well, I was just at Astrobotic a couple weeks ago, and they unveiled their Peregrine lander. That was really exciting to see. It was the kind of first, I think, of the unveilings, and it just shows the diversity of the capabilities that industry has developed, the commercial space has developed, that you know is really being helped by the Commercial Lunar Payload Services, or the CLPS program. And for us, that intuitive machines that Bob talked about with Steve Ultimus, we actually, the IM-2 machine is basically a technology demonstration mission. And we have on there the first use of the Prime 1, the drill that searches for water. That same drill will be, and mass spectrometer will then be used on the Viper mission and be mobile about it. But so we'll have an early demonstration of that. We also have a 4G LTE network demonstration that Nokia has offered. And then also a lunar hopper, basically go, if you try to extend your reach, this would be a small hopper that can go about a mile at a time, between hops along the lunar surface and stuff. And you can imagine then hopping down into a crater, hopping back out, and that sort of thing is the intent. We have overall about 25 or so flight demonstrations right now as we go forward. But I'll also say is we're actually in an evaluation period. It's something I meant to say in the other chart. I just wanted to talk briefly about our budget, because some of you at least have heard about that. First of all, we have our budget for space technology in FY22 is $1.1 billion, which is a very strong budget, I believe. You can do an awful lot with that when you're dealing with technology items. We're really excited to have that budget. And we're even more excited about the FY23 President's budget request, which is about 30% more than that or something. It shows a real dedication, and you heard it yesterday with Bill Nelson's testimony, and Bob mentioned it this morning. There's a real push towards understanding that we've got to fund our technology programs in order for us to proceed. Now, so the downside of that, of course, it's a request. Our appropriations for FY22 is good. It was 1.1 billion, but it also is flat. We've had the same budget now for 3 straight years, 2 years in a row of flat budgets, and it does mean that we're right now going to be being very careful of what we have, and we won't be able to advance some of the things that we wanted, including a couple of the demonstrations we'll have on the moon are very likely to go that way. So I just wanted to at least address it up front, but what we're also optimistic about the strong support that's out there, it really in all our stakeholders as well. It's just there's tough decisions that have to be made. And we're excited about where that will go here in FY23. Next chart. It's my pleasure to talk about one of our challenges, because we actually have an announcement to make of our winners for this. This is, we started, it was 2 years ago, we started a challenge that we called Honey, I Shrunk the NASA Payload. And the idea behind that is, I mentioned the hopper, and there's also multiple places where little rovers are being there. So what we wanted to do is find payloads that would go on one of those platforms and stuff. And so to do so, you need to be about the size of a extra thick bar of soap. The lander itself, these are little rovers that are about the size of a Roomba and stuff. So, but it's amazing what people were able to do and create, and we want to just get creative and see what they could do. And so the idea behind this challenge was to seek out creative approaches to developing miniature payloads to collect information on the lunar environment and resources. Beyond that, it was pretty wide open. And you can see there's 3 winners that we had. Actually, when we went through there's been 2 phases and a couple of stages or something. I've kind of lost track, but we received originally 132 submissions from 29 different countries with ideas for this. We awarded to the top 14 teams about $1 million worth of prize money. And then from there, we asked, I think 3 or 4 of them, well, there's 14 or so that went on, and we narrowed it down to 3 that became our winners that we're just announcing now, and it'll be published in about 20 minutes. So anyways, those 3 winners are Sun Slicer. It's X-ray spectrometer. You can read the words about as well as I do, but the idea behind using the solar corona to help detect elements and stuff is pretty cool. That's the first prize winner. The Pooley water snooper identifies hydrogen and hydrogen-bearing volatiles. I've never heard water talked about as being a hydrogen-bearing volatile before, but it's a new definition to me. But anyways, so it measures quantity and distributions. And then the microrad is radiation demonstration. So we're really excited, and I'd like to ask you to give them a round of applause for the 3 winners that we have that we're going to try to fly. Okay, thank you. Could I have the next chart, please? All right, I have 2 charts. I just want to talk about a couple of things that are going on right now within space technology over the next a few months and stuff. First of all, we have this, what we call a capstone lunar CubeSat. Well, we call it a CubeSat because it officially is 12U size or something like that. But you know what? A 12U size thing is a small sat. And especially when you put those arrays and stuff. But the idea behind capstone was one we had back in mid-2019. We said, well, we're going to go to this halo orbit. The near rectilinear halo orbit with a gateway. We said we've never actually operated in that. Why don't we take a small a CubeSat and just see if we go to there first and demonstrate the capabilities of going into and out of this orbit, that sort of stuff, demonstrate and here some autonomous navigation on a very small satellite and some other things. And so Advanced Space has led this mission for us, doing a great job. And we're just about ready to fly. It should be in the next few weeks or something. That if you look, we'll be launching out of New Zealand, and there'll be the first entry into that orbit, and help guide us. And so we're really excited about that. I had the privilege of going out to Advanced Space, and they're in Colorado in the Denver area, for ribbon cutting for their operations center, because a lot of these places, that's the other thing that's kind of cool about these small business operators, the coach, and these folks, is their operation centers are right there with where they work. The other demonstration we have, it's coming up in, let's see, it's this fall now. It is timing for what we call the lofted flight demonstration. The idea behind this is one of the key technologies that would help us land humans on the moon or in large payloads. I'm sorry, on Mars, not the moon. And have or potentially used for large payloads on Earth. This is a pure, true public-private partnership. We do not exchange any funds with ULA, but they are a key part of this demonstration with the flight. It's a ride share for one of their flights. It's the JPSS-2 mission as we go through it. And the idea behind it is you need to, with the atmosphere of Mars being so thin, but there, existent, you need it. It's kind of the anti-Goldilocks atmosphere, because it's not thick enough to help you slow down, but it's too thick. But it is too thick, so it causes you some issues. And so the idea is get a big drag area. How do you get a big drag area? And is one way is to inflate. And so the idea behind this is this is a demonstration in Earth atmosphere, which we can simulate the conditions for a Mars return, and then it inflates. This is a 6-meter diameter demonstration of the technology, and we'll watch it land and stuff here this fall. In order to land the 20 metric tons or so that we need for the moon, from Mars, it needs to be about 15 meters. And something. So, but this is a great first step. It also is a potential for returning large mass to Earth and stuff. So that's why it's there. So we're looking forward to that. And the JPSS-2 mission is sometime now this fall. Next chart. 2 optical communications demos that we have also. The laser communications relay demonstration on the left is something that launched in December. And on the STP-6 satellite of the STP-3 mission for U.S. Space Force. And so the idea behind this is we'll be demonstrating bidirectional optical communications between the spacecraft in geo orbit and the ground in a couple different ground stations, and just demonstrate that capability and usability of that sort of capability. And so we're looking forward to that. It has completed now the checkout. It's very successfully, and we're getting into the experiment phase, which is expected to last a couple of years is our target. And then also the deep space optical communications is an optical comm that we have manifested on the Psyche mission for SMD's mission to the asteroid belt along the way. So it gives us the capability to demonstrate a very from deep space communications, optical communications all the way to the ground from the spacecraft. And so it's a complementary spacecraft compared with LCRD. One's in geo and one's in deep space. And that mission is on track for early August launch. And our DSOC item is integrated into the vehicle now as we speak. And so we're looking forward to that mission. Next chart. Then this is something we want to reach out to the audience here and gain input as we go forward. This will be the subject of some of the discussions tomorrow. But I just want to talk about it a little bit. Is we did, as I said, we have this Go, Land, Live, Explore basic framework of what our technologies are. We've been developing, and as I said, tomorrow there'll be a lot more discussion on Envision Futures. And so with those, the idea is we're trying to document in a small package, what's the state of the art as we understand it? What do we think the needs are, and what are some technology gaps? We've released, then with these 4 different strategic thrusts, we're releasing requests for information for industry or for anyone out there that wants to comment to it. And we're looking for your help in improving our product and giving us your perspective. So we did release the Go back on April 7th with the responses due May 20th. The Live, we're releasing here within the next couple of weeks or so. And so we're kind of previewing them tomorrow for several of them, not all of them, that's in that category. And then Land and Explore, we plan to do both together in August, September timeframe. And then that will lead towards the Ascend conferences in October, and we've worked out with AAA that our intent will be to kind of present all these things at that forum as we go forward. So, and next chart. And then my last chart is funding opportunities. I'll just mention some of these right now. We mentioned the Tipping Point. We also have a sister program to Tipping Point, which is called the Announcement of Collaboration Opportunity. The main difference is that the ACO that we call it is no exchange of funds with whoever's there, but we do provide technical expertise. Tipping Point, we can exchange funds. This is a 2-stage process that we go through. First of all, we seek ideas and preliminary proposals. We pick the ones that we want to further have as full proposals, and then we go through that. So right now, we've received those preliminary proposals, and we've begun the review of those. And I'll say that the response was tremendous. It's something like over 250 proposals that we received. That second line that's really long, well, that's our tech flights program. Suborbital things is traditionally what we do for suborbital payloads and stuff. We typically have about 60 or so flights per year of payloads, stuff like that. So anyways, this year though, we've combined it with some orbital flight opportunities for low cost. And so we've broadened that there. And so responses are due in June, and I think it's July or something like that is when the proposals will be due. The Watts on the Moon Challenge Phase 2 is open, registering by June 15th. Early, and it's not on this chart, but we just had a discussion yesterday on Break the Ice Phase 2, and so that's not on our chart, but it is something we're planning on releasing probably in this summer timeframe as well. Early stage innovations is our space tech research grants, one of the top ones we have there. Those we've just released those topics, and the notice of intent is due by May 25th. Our Space Tech Research Institutes, these are something we do every other year. There's 3 universities at least that have to have 15% stake in the proposal they have. For us, what we do is we give topics that are fairly broad, but are focused, but pretty open of what they want to do with them. And so the idea behind those is we pick a couple topics and then we'll go out for proposal reviews. It's also a 2-step process as we go through it. And then the NIAC, one of our favorite programs for really, as long as you don't break the laws of physics and you have a revolutionary idea that could serve a mission, then it's fair game. And it has to be revolutionary to have you score well. That Phase 1 opens in June. And then our space technology graduate research opportunities, which are for our grad students and stuff, opens again. It's annual and opens in September. So with that, it's a pleasure for me to be here, and I really look forward to the next 2 days. Thank you.
All right, we're about to take a break, but do you mind answering one quick question?
That's fine, sure.
Okay, so we have one that asks, when are the tipping point selections expected to be announced?
Yeah, when the tipping point selections are expected to be announced, it kind of comes back to that budget thing that I talked about. And so what we've done is we originally were thinking we'd do it a little faster, but as it became apparent where our budget could potentially head, we put off the solicitation so that we're timing it so that it'd be an FY23 dollars as stuff. And so right now, by a nominal timeline, in that first quarter of the FY is when we could announce. We're also going to have to see where we think our budget will be. And so we'll make that decision later on. But what we're going to do is proceed ahead, with the timeline we're on right now, with the idea of this fall, we could, late fall, we could make the announcements, but we'll just see how it looks.
Okay, thank you very much. So with that, I'd like to offer you all to stretch, get a drink, whatever you'd like to do. We also are going to be throughout the meeting having little polls in Slido about all kinds of stuff, right? Some's trivia, some are demographic questions, kind of how many meetings have you been to, those kind of things. So please, you've got a little scan URL, not URL, God, I'm getting old. What's that little QR code? Thank you. There's a QR code in the inside of your programs for those who are in the room, and others online should have gotten the link in your meeting info. So we'll see you all in just under at noon Eastern.